Christina and Leon. Hey, congratulations for Paris is in Harlem.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, more importantly, it's a much bigger congratulations that's being featured at the film festival for Slamdance.
Yes, we're very happy that Slamdance has us, and of course we're dreaming to be in person, you know, and all the cast and the jazz musicians coming together and having a concert, a live concert. But well, you know, we'll do it another time.
Well, let me start with this easy question. Well, I mean, the mandatory question. Christina, where the original idea came from or what inspired you to do Paris is in Harlem?
I can probably say a different thing in every interview because it is true. There's all those little things, you know, it's the way that my mind works. I think, you know, the short question is New York. It's always New York. It's a love letter to New York. It's, you know, New York is jazz and jazz is New York. And the longer question is there's, you know, there's so many stories that come together in this film, and every one of those stories has a little bit a moment of inspiration that started it. And I was saying before, you know, the very first one actually where I felt this is actually like the backbone of this film was a situation similar to the one that Leon Sam had to experience, which is Serenity, this gentleman coming, you know, on his first day of homelessness, coming to the bar and talking to the people and asking them, give me a big yes or a big no. Have you ever been alive? And basically taking them out of their conversations and harassing them, and they looking away as if he doesn't exist, and Sam getting in between. And there's, you know, there's all sorts of things happening for each person, and also all sorts of consequences for each person in this situation. So that's a very New York moment. And I think that was the first one which made me think that, okay, there's a backbone of my next film.
Well, I guess it's tossed to Leon. Leon, what initially attracted to you? Obviously, Sam is the backbone of a film like this.
Yeah, you know, we were introduced to one another, Christina and I, about through James McDaniel, I think, and we went for a drink, and we talked about him, and she talked about him to me, and well, I discovered that he's Southern, I am Southern. His father was a minister, both my grandparents were ministers, and my brother, and so. And then I learned about him and his being instrumental all these years in the music and in Harlem and the jazz scene, and it was like, you know, it was like this gentleman who had the Harlem Renaissance sort of handed to him, and he kept it going, and now he's handing it to another generation. So the pressures were immense because I met him, and he's a wonderful, wonderful person. I always speak of him in the present tense because he was just an amazing person, and just trying to give it the justice and the weight that of his life, you know, and his importance in the Harlem scene and in the world of music, I should say, and dare I say the universe. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say there's something about Sam, about the real Sam, that, you know, if I would have to sort of put it in two words, that has to do with his personality, and is extremely generous and extremely sweet. There's something about, you know, there's the centered quality of, there's nothing, you know, he really was alive. you know, that question, give me a strong yes or a strong no. Have you ever been alive? I mean, probably that, and that's, it's absurd, isn't it? If you think about it, that, that he passed when, just a couple of months after we shot this film. And I think that that quality of generosity and sweetness that he had, I found in Leon. And you know, I don't want to embarrass you, Leon, but that's, you know, that's a very strong aspect of a personality, and that's when, you know, I knew, okay, that's, you know, that's my Sam. That's the Sam, you know, that although you look very different, I mean, and you're much younger than Sam in real life. So.
Well, that is such a great compliment for you, Leon. How?
True. Not a compliment. Just an observation. I'm just observing, you know.
Leon, how in real life, how musical are you?
Well, how musical? Is that the question? How musical? Well, I have like a lot of these things on the wall, if you can see. Guitars. I have a ukulele. I have a bass guitar. I have an electric guitar. 2 electric guitars. All very.
Yeah, that's another thing we had in common, right? I mean, I play the guitar as well, so. But yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, you know, if you ask the real Sam that question, he would tell you, oh, I started as a musician, but I wasn't good enough. So it's better to sort of, you know.
I will never be good enough. I will never be good enough. But I love them. I love music. I love the instruments. You know, I do. I actually, you know, early on in the city, I have to say, this tapestry which Christina has woven is like the most authentic New York film I think I've ever seen. It is so layered, and I had the privilege of meeting George Coleman, who played with Miles Davis, and his son George Coleman Jr. early on when years ago in New York City, and you know, just going and watching them play. And being in that atmosphere, you know, it was just this film so took me there. You know, I was just like, oh God, I remember this. I remember this side of New York so well, and it has to keep going. It has to continue, and that's what Sam was doing. You know, that's what he had been doing his entire life. So we owe him that much. You know, yeah. Keep that freshness, that artistic freshness of New York alive, and in all its relevance. I mean, it's just it's something we have to do. We can't let that go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Christina, tell us about the, you know, inputting the music throughout the entire film and finding all these jazz musicians.
Well, you know, like all those, it's really interesting, you know. Where do I start that story? Well, basically, I should start with saying that it all started with me listening to or seeing the drummer, the prodigy drummer in the film, Kojo Oduroni, playing when he was 11 years old. It's now 4 years later. It was at the New York premiere of my, of 2 films back, 42 Seconds of Happiness, at the Harlem Film Festival. And he was playing at the opening night. And I was like, wow, you know, who is this 11-year-old, you know, who has this chutzpah and this whole, you know, this whole attitude, the music, you know, and so I spent like a year trying to locate him. And when I did, I started talking, you know, I kind of, you know, became friends with his father, who is Antoine Roney, who is one of the, you know, legendary musicians coming from the 90s, who plays in front of the gates and plays, you know, we follow him on the bridge and so on. And Antoine is, he kind of connected me with the other musicians. He's also the music supervisor on the film. And he brought in Camille Thurman. He brought in Tamaki Sanders, who are, you know, their father is Pharrell Sanders, who is probably the most legendary jazz musician alive today. And there's, you know, there's 8 musicians in this film who are unique. And we selected the songs, and then they improvised the songs while we were shooting. And obviously, you know, this is not as easy as it sounds, because this has to feel like, you know, it's actually happening the same time as, you know, the scenes are happening, but you cannot shoot it that way, because otherwise you won't hear the dialogue or you won't hear the music. So, so I'm really happy the way that it kind of you get this sense, it's almost a documentary, as if you actually, you know, did record at the same time the dialogue and the music. And it's all improvised, and it's all so effortless and easygoing, like you're actually in a bar. So yes, does that answer your question? I kind of deviated and went all over the place. Like, you know, my mind is structured that way. But yeah, I hope I answered a part of your question.
It's all good. Christina, could you address the, you know, the cancel culture aspect, or the non-politically correct? It seems, you know, I guess everyone has to go through that in their lifetimes, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's part of today. It's part, you know, I wanted to capture that moment, and that moment in the city, and it's part, you know, if I had ignored all those, what I like to call them identity wars. There's kind of a feeling of, you know, we each have our identity, and we have to find our identity and protect our identity, and there's a separation that goes on because of that very strong sense of identity. So I think that's, you know, part of capturing that moment, and also asking all the questions and finding the questions. I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to give any answers or any messages, or, but I think that a lot of questions are on the table that, you know, through the film. So, and honestly, you know, this idea of cancel culture, I mean, the cabaret law, the no dancing law, was the cancel culture par excellence. You know, it was the effort to cancel the jazz culture, you know. So that's there's a little parallel there, which is interesting. Yeah, Leon, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, what I think, you know, it certainly has happened before, and I think the pendulum will eventually swing back to a more a place of equilibrium. But what I think with cancel culture that is often forgotten is that there are families of those people who are canceled on both sides, right? I mean, it's not just them, it's not just their job. It is oftentimes the fact that they have children, they have loved ones. And so, you know, I think it can be a bit dangerous if we lose track of the human being, that the human beings that are involved. So yeah. hopefully, yeah. And I think artistically, if you're always having to think about what you're doing or saying, it is like putting a you know, stopper in the bottle, creativity. So that's, you know, where I come down on.
Yeah. On the other hand, you know, on a positive note, it's kind of, you know, sometimes you have to go through something really difficult that feels like a difficult birth for you know, to sort of get on the next level. So there's a lot of conversations we're having now, and part of those conversations are in the film that are, you know, sort of, sometimes it feels like you're walking on moving sand or on eggshells, as one of the characters says. You don't know what to say. You don't know, you don't want to offend somebody. You know, you're offended. You know, you're a little bit more conscious of how traumatic certain microaggressions are. You know, we used to completely ignore them, and now we're a little bit more conscious about that, and it kind of leaves their traces. So it's very complex. It's complicated. But I think, you know, what you said, Leon, that it's the human side of that. It's the emotional side of that. That was the most important aspect for me in this film. So it's not just the you know, the objective side of what we say, but it's also the other things that are going on in our life. So, you know, when Sam comes out and speaks to Serenity the way he does, it's also because he has this whole situation in life where, you know, he's worried about his children, he's upset with his ex-wife, there's a divorce that is happening at the same time, where he's losing custody. At the same time, there's this cabaret law story going on. So there's a lot of pressure that kind of gets expressed in the way it does, because that's the fight that he has at that moment. So, and each of those characters have their own backgrounds as well. So that's how, you know, when you bring those characters together, you know, and knowing, having all that information as an audience member, you can see maybe a little bit deeper, and you can see a little bit more, you know, more beyond the surface of what we see in you know, other in real life, or maybe in other forms of storytelling when we concentrate on one character.
Well, let me end this with an upbeat note, just like your film. Have you ever been alive?
That's a good question. I think I have. Not always and not continuously. But I think there were moments where I've been alive. What about you, Leon?
Yes, I think there are moments I've been alive. I think there are moments I've been dead. But I definitely alive. I think when you yeah, it's hard to describe. And I think, you know, it's funny. I think most of them have been on stage when I felt most.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah. You know, I mean, those are the creative moments. Those are the moments when the moments of inspiration. That's when I've been alive, and that's when I'm alive. And I think I'm gonna die when I stop being inspired. You know, I think that's death. Death is when there's no inspiration anymore. You know. But when we're together and we work and we rehearse and we workshop and we film and, you know, editing, and or even are on the New York subway and you get inspired because something happens that inspires you. New York is that way, right? New York is a character and it's so inspiring. Then you're alive. So we live for those moments, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, those are excellent answers. Well, anyways.
What about you? Have you ever been alive?
I feel alive every day. I get to talk to you folks about your passion projects and get to retell your stories and promote them. And that's what I do.
That's great. That's great. It's great to be in love with what you do.
That's right. Well, Christina, Leon, thank you very much for speaking to us of Paris and Harlem, and congratulations for showcasing this. World gets to see it at Slamdance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.